I'm not an influencer, right? I'm a doctor of psychology.
Well, why would you call her a doctor, brother? A hustler, Dr. Alleged Bryant. She a hustler, dog.
I know I'm a person of integrity and character, and so I stand on that.
Bullshit.
But that, you don't get the right to say that, because in all cases, we've seen when you say the truth, oh, that nigga ain't nothing but bitter. Oh, that nigga hating.
For the folks who have already made up their mind to not like me or not understand me, listen, I don't give a what your narrative is.
They called him a hater. They called him bitter. They said he was a failed comedian with nothing better to do than tear down a black woman who was out here doing the work.
If somebody is a doctor, they will be proud to show you, I'm a doctor. She can't do it. She just says it. This is a fantasy that woman is living.
For years, Corey Holcomb asked one question, a simple, direct, completely reasonable question, and the internet turned him into the villain for asking it. Now the truth is catching up, and the woman who never answered the question is still running.
My job is not to convince people. My job is to stay in my lane as a psychology expert and life coach and provide, my coaching expertise and allow people who need it to take it.
Let's get into this. The question Corey Holcomb has been asking for years is not complicated. It is not a personal attack. It is not misogyny dressed up as criticism. It is the most basic question you ask anyone who presents themselves as a credentialed professional in a field that directly impacts people's mental health and relationships.
When somebody say Dr. Bryant, it irks me. Where's her colleagues? Where's she a doctor at? Because I've done the research.
And it was what?
I don't see doctor nowhere.
Where is the dissertation? Where are the colleagues? Where is the institutional record that confirms Cheyenne Bryant actually holds the doctorate she has been building a career on? That's it. That is the whole question. And it has never been answered. Think about what that means for a second. We are not talking about whether someone is talented or entertaining or has good advice. We are talking about credentials. Credentials that Bryant has used to position herself as a psychology expert and life coach. Credentials that give her authority in rooms she otherwise would not be in.
Doctor, alleged doctor, whatever you want to call her, we're gonna prove some points about this lady today. And it ain't even gotta be bitter, it's just the flat out facts. The research on where she's claiming she got whatever from has been done. It's all fake.
Credentials that shape how people receive what she says and how much weight they give her words. When those credentials cannot be verified, that is not a personal opinion. That is a public accountability issue. Corey Holcomb understood that years ago, and he paid for it. The playbook Bryant and her supporters ran against Corey was straight out of the deflection manual. When you cannot answer the question, you discredit the person asking it.
This Corey Holcomb thing comes from, he was a guest on a show I was co-hosting.
Okay.
I drilled his ass. And obviously he's still in his feminine, his failed comedian career, his failed marriage, and his failed parenting skills with his kids. Alcoholic, he drinks a lot. I see what he looked like on Cam Newton interview. Do you see how unwell, hygienically clean he looked?
You reframe the whole conversation. You make it about his failures instead of your credentials. And that is exactly what happened. On Cam Newton's podcast, Bryant went in on Corey personally. She attacked his comedy career. She went after his marriage. She questioned his parenting. Everything except the one thing anyone with a real doctorate could have shut down in 30 seconds by producing documentation. Let that land. She had a platform. She had an audience. And she chose to use that moment to attack a comedian's personal life rather than show her degree.
Black people trying to cancel black people. I think that is disgusting. I think it's sick. I think that it's a representation of jealousy and enviousness. I think that it's for folks who believe in God, it is not Christ-like. I think it creates a deeper division between us. There's bigger things that we can get together and cancel.
Why? Because if the degree was real and verifiable, that is the easiest win imaginable. You pull out the receipts, you show the institution, you point to the dissertation in the academic database, you let the documentation do the talking, and Corey Holcomb looks like a fool in front of everybody. That does not happen here. Instead, Bryant redirects the entire conversation to whether Corey is a good husband and father. That is not a defense. That is a distraction, and the people paying attention saw exactly what it was. Here's what makes this even harder to explain away. Verifying a doctorate is not some obscure, difficult process. If you finished a real doctoral program, Your dissertation exists in a searchable academic database.
And that confused me because people online have said they were still able to obtain their records from closed universities through a third-party vendor called Parchment. So Dr. Bryant, who told you down to Parchment that you couldn't get your paperwork? Because I want them subpoenaed and into court for questioning as well.
Your university has a registrar who can confirm your enrollment and graduation. Your advisors and committee members are real people who exist and can be named. None of that requires a personal essay or a TED Talk. It requires 5 minutes and a screenshot. Compare that to what Bryant actually offered instead. Not a screenshot, not a link, not a name. Just a personal attack on a comedian's marriage and parenting, delivered with total confidence, as if changing the subject convincingly enough would make the original question disappear.
And that confused me because people online have said they were still able to obtain their records from closed universities through a third-party vendor called Parchment. So Dr. Bryant, who told you down to Parchment that you couldn't get your paperwork? Because I want them subpoenaed and into court for questioning as well.
And for a while, it worked. That's the part we're sitting with. This wasn't corrected in real time. Corey took the hit publicly for years while the actual question sat there unanswered.
I'm just saying, man, people get mad at me, it happens, but in the long run, when people study what you say, they're gonna be like, oh, they was right there.
People called him bitter. People called him jealous. People said he was attacking a successful black woman because he couldn't stand to see her win. None of those responses addressed the dissertation. None of them named a university. None of them produced a single piece of documentation. They were emotional arguments used to end a factual conversation, and for a long stretch of time, that strategy was enough to shut the conversation down. That's the pattern worth naming clearly. When someone cannot produce the receipts, the fastest way to survive online is to make the question feel inappropriate to ask in the first place. Make it about the asker's character, their marriage, their past, anything except the actual claim on the table. It's a redirection built for an audience that is emotionally primed to defend rather than verify. And it very nearly worked here. Then there is her response on The Breakfast Club. Bryant told the audience that her job is not to convince people, that she is staying in her lane as a psychology expert and life coach. And on the surface, some people heard that and thought it sounded dignified, like she was above the noise.
I've earned the title, I have multiple degrees, and I'm not going to prove anything to anybody. My obedience is to God, not to people. And so as long as I'm in his will and I'm serving and I'm doing his, his word, my sheep will know my voice. Even the sheep in wolf clothing. That is not my battle.
But here is the thing about that framing. Nobody is asking you to convince anyone of anything. Nobody needs you to do a TED Talk or write a public essay. They are asking you to point to a publicly accessible academic record that already exists if what you are claiming is true. Staying in your lane does not mean you get to dodge a factual question about whether your lane is real. The "I don't need to prove myself" posture only works when the evidence exists and you are just choosing not to engage. When the evidence itself is what is in question, that posture becomes something else entirely. It becomes avoidance dressed as confidence. And this audience knows the difference. Now, here's what makes this whole situation even more significant. Corey Holcomb, the man who has been vindicated here, is not gloating. He sat down with Paul Pierce and made it clear he is not in "I told you so" mode. He is not naming names.
It ain't like I felt like, nah, I told you, I just was, I don't know, see what it is when I went on Cam Newton. Right. It was a little bit right after she went on there. And this is what happens out here, man. We out here still walking around amongst the people in the street. Right. And it's people in the street who knew this lady. I would never say names because these people ain't even in the game or nothing no more. They just regular citizens. Right. They knew her. And they was like, I can't believe she pulling it off.
He says he has no personal hatred toward Bryant. For someone who took years of public ridicule for asking a legitimate question, that restraint is notable. That is not what a bitter, petty comedian looks like. That is what a man who was right all along looks like when the truth finally catches up. And the contrast between his restraint and her aggression tells you everything you need to know about who actually had something to hide in this situation. We also have to address the black men tearing down black women angle that got deployed heavily when this controversy first gained traction, because that framing got used as a shield and it worked on a lot of people. Corey's critics leaned into that narrative hard. They made him the face of misogynoir for daring to ask about a credential. And that framing did real damage to his reputation for a period of time. But here is what that argument never dealt with. The credential question does not become invalid because of who is asking it. It does not become an act of misogyny because a black man raised it first. If a black woman had asked the same question about Bryant's doctorate, we would not be having that conversation. The question itself was always legitimate. The identity of the person asking it was a distraction from the substance. And now that the substance is being examined more widely, the deflection does not have anywhere left to go. Corey also raised some broader claims about Bryant's behavior and personal patterns in the Paul Pierce interview, comparing certain conduct to what he described as psychopathic traits and making statements about her personal relationships. Those are his claims. They are not confirmed facts. But what is confirmed is the pattern that is played out in public for everyone to see. Every time Bryant has been pressed on credentials, the response has been deflection, personal attack, or a statement about not needing to prove herself. That pattern is documented. That pattern is on video. That pattern is something this audience has now watched play out across multiple platforms. Here is the bottom line on what Cheyenne Bryant's credential controversy actually represents. It is not just about one person and whether they have a doctorate. It is about what happens when the culture allows aesthetics and personality to substitute for accountability. When someone presents themselves as an authority in a space as serious as psychology and mental health, the people they are advising deserve to know whether that authority is real. The audience that has looked to Bryant for relationship and psychological guidance deserves honesty about what she actually is versus what she has claimed to be. And the people who mocked Corey Holcomb for years for asking a basic accountability question owe him something. They owe him an acknowledgement that the question was valid, that asking for evidence is not the same as attacking someone, that demanding credentials from someone presenting themselves as a credentialed professional is not bitterness. It is basic logic. Corey Holcomb was right. He was right when nobody wanted to hear it. He was right when it cost him audience and reputation. He was right when the internet turned him into the villain of a story where he was actually the only one asking the honest question. The woman who was supposed to have all the answers still has not produced the one answer that matters. And no amount of pivoting to Corey's comedy career, his marriage, or his parenting changes that fact. The question is still on the table. The documentation still does not exist in any accessible form, and the person who asked it first is still standing, vindicated, without even raising his voice. If you're tired of the watered-down takes and want the real story behind what's happening in the culture, stick with BarzBuzz. We don't do PR, we don't do spin. Just the truth the industry doesn't want trending. Subscribe and make sure you're notified. The next one drops sooner than you think.